My journey is basically at school. I was quite interested in medicine and biology, and taking biology for my A-levels, I just knew I loved the human body. That was when, yes, this is for me.
I love the comparison to trying to drink from a fire hydrant with a straw, except I add there's multiple fire hydrants coming on at any one stage and you're jumping between the fire hydrants. And it was, my mind had felt quite brainless when I started, and towards the end you go, holy hell, the brain starts to absorb and you absorb all this information. It's just incredible how the mind can expand.
Oh, coming home, right? Coming home, I grew up here, finished my high school here. I finished my medical training in China, but then I did come here to work. And after my public health training in the States, I came back here. That's when I worked for WHO and also AUSAID. That's just like a USAID version of the Australian government. So this is really home. And all of my family is all here. I'm the only one in the States, and my friends.
Then, as I did my own research into everything, VCMP just felt like the right fit, because the main reason why I wanted to do health was to help, to help, because then, I was seeing things like how my own grandmother couldn't get certain healthcare because she'd be sent from pillar to post, where she could have just got the same thing from one person. So I just felt like I want to be involved in that. I want to, make some kind of difference.
I had a woman with chest pain this morning. I referred her to hospital. And I had a young diabetic patient with appendicitis, which comes just, my assistant calls me and said, you have to do a visit at home. So then I'm off, and you find somebody who's young and who's very ill and had a lot of pain. And then it gives you a good feeling that you can, arrange things very quickly. And so within about 20 minutes you have the ambulance, and the person is now in hospital. Later at night or tomorrow morning I will see his results and what's been done. That is what's in your mind all day, of course, these patients. Yeah.
By you telling them that you that is talking to them is also a survivor, you was in the same state they are in currently, and they walk out from the ETU and they are back, psychologically is a kind of huge, positive impact, all right? They feel that, they can also be like you. And so our roles in there was actually to encourage, to encourage patients that you can make it, you need to be strong, you need to have the faith that you can make it.
You need to be passionate about your work. People are passionate about so many things. It may not necessarily be the job. The job may be a means of earning a living. They may be passionate about something which they do as a hobby. But to me, it so happened that my passion and my means of earning a living is the same. So I totally enjoy what I'm doing. But yes, you need to have that kind of a drive, that motivation, that interest into the job to excel and go raise the bars, go beyond what is expected out of you, and to gain that kind of satisfaction.
I enjoy my work. That's why I'm still in it, and at my age that I still go to work every day and enjoy it is because I feel like it's worthwhile, and I like to listen to people's problems and try to give them some direction so that they do have a healthy, long life, and it pays off. There's always those times when people come back and appreciate what you did for them, or sometimes you don't even know what you did for people and they come back and say, you remember, and you don't even remember telling them that or giving them that advice, and they come back later and thank you for that.
But it's like a routine. You come to work, you do what you need to do, and you get thank you from this, you get thank you from that, from this one or that one, doesn't matter. And you continue your day. At the end of the day, it's work. You're trying to do it as good as you can, as professionally as you can. And you're studying. You keep studying all the time. After you finish the work here, you go home and you read and you learn. I don't think it ever ends.
When the cattle are prowling and coyotes are howling under the western sky, when the cowboys are singing and spurs are a-jingling as down the trail he rides.
From infancy to newborn all the way to death, you know, I saw them all in family practice. And in the VA, it was you know, strictly the veterans that had were in there for mental illness, a lot of bipolar and schizophrenia. And that was actually more of everything. It was not just mental health, but people came to the emergency room or urgent care for all kinds of medical conditions. And then I ended up in long-term psychiatric care. So these are people that were institutionalized. Some of them were institutionalized for 10, 20 years. They'd never, you know, be able to live independently or in a group home or anything. They had to be, you know, in a supervised, locked facility, you know. So, and then my last job before came here was more adult medicine.
She'll increase her insulin to 20 units. She'll increase her insulin to 20 units, period. She has an appointment with diabetic education.
I enjoy the adult medicine. It's a lot of work because there's a lot of things you got to deal with in every visit. So it's not like a well child check where, you know, you just bounce through it and give them their immunizations and they're out the door. But here you got multiple things going on. Usually you got, you know, high blood pressure, you got diabetes, you got cholesterol, you got maybe a previous cancer, or you're working up some illness of anemia or something. And so there's always something going on, and a multitude of past medical history and ongoing problems that you gotta all work with. So I come about 6 o'clock in the morning, I start my chart work, reviewing my lab results, any patient calls from the day before that I didn't address, renewing medications, and then I look at my schedule for the day, and so then I start seeing my patients at 8 o'clock in the morning.
So what are the differences you've noticed between a physician's assistant taking care of you and a doctor or an MD taking care of you?
It's easier to get to a specialist.
That's what I was going to say.
It's more like you're dealing with someone at your own. You can understand what they're saying.
They're comfortable around. They seem more happier, and they talk with us.
He doesn't hand out. I used to go like to the emergency room when I needed to see a doctor, because I was on the road. I was on a truck. I ran cross country, and you'd go into a doctor, and the first thing the doctor would say at the emergency room is, "What kind of pain pill do you want?" You'll never get me to say a bad word about a PA.
Nope.
It ain't
They
gonna happen.
will save your life.
What are the benefits of working with PAs?
Well, the benefits in this town is that there's more people that get to be seen by someone who has medical training, which we have a desperate need of. There's not enough physicians around here, and we have very well trained PAs and nurse practitioners that help accomplish what we need to do with people here. So that's the benefit. Many practices hire PAs because it has a real good financial benefit. I mean, you tend to make money off of them, but that's not the arrangement here where I work. It's at best neutral because there is supervision involved and things like that. And there are a few procedures that I do that he doesn't do that might come here.
Yeah, I'm not a real procedure person.
Until I train him to do those, he doesn't.
I don't like it. I'm lazy.
He's cognitive.
That's right, I'm cognitive. And then I usually get an hour and a half to do that, to catch up at noon, and then I'm back seeing patients till 5 o'clock, and then finish up my day with my dictation and stuff. And usually I'm done by about 6 o'clock, so it's a 12-hour day.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun. I'm always noted at the clinic as the one with the laugh, and patients will say that when I went my offices are next door to each other, and so there's just a wall separating my two offices where exam rooms, and so I'll be in one exam room, and then I'll go into the other exam room, and just like last week, the one lady says, "Dick, I sure like listening to your laugh when I'm sitting here," so they can hear me, but
it's therapeutic.
It is good. Yeah, I think it is really there. Well, they find laughter makes you live longer.
And what are those?
These are eggs. One of our people that work here has chickens and ducks, and so I buy some from her every so often.
Can I see them?
Sure.
These are
duck eggs.
Okay. So what are you going to use them for?
Probably use them for baking, mostly baking. Yeah.
And what is your philosophy on healthcare?
My overall philosophy on healthcare, the biggest problem we have in this country for healthcare is that capitalism is good because it instills research, cutting edge. People want to get ahead. They want to make a buck on something new that they develop. But the trouble is there's a lot of waste in healthcare of how people develop things that are marginal or not helpful at all, but yet things can be twisted and turned and make it look like they are helpful and beneficial, and they really are not that much more beneficial. I give the example of diabetes, how we have all these things to treat diabetes with, and I rarely use any medications beyond the basic oral medicines that have been out there, and I'll add some insulin sometimes, or combinations of some of the old insulins, and I can get A1Cs or how you control diabetes just as good as people who use all these expensive new technological preparations for diabetes. And a lot of it has to do with education and learning to tune your medicines to how that patient lives his day. It's a lot harder to change a patient's behavior, but it's a lot easier to modulate your treatment plan around how they live their life. Granted, they have to make some changes, but yet you have to accommodate and not make a rigid structure for them on how they have to take care of it. And so, I always do really well on how percentage of my diabetics are controlled. And it's not because I use all the fancy drip medications and stuff, but I use the basics, but learn how to use them appropriately with each patient.
You got a busy day today.
Yeah.
What are they hauling?
Silence.
Oh, silence.
So that's a big thing with capitalism, is that everybody's trying to make a dollar, and they make their medications or their products sound like these as this is the one that you use for you. And I can't believe how many medical providers get sucked in to utilizing certain things for patient care, and that's one of the reasons we have such a problem with opioid addiction in this country, is because the providers got sucked in, and they were told that, oh, this medicine's, say if you use OxyContin and you use it, and you don't have to worry about valleys and spikes, that these people will always have this in their bloodstream. And the trouble is common sense tells you that this stuff is addicting, and when you get so much and doesn't work anymore, you want more. And then to get these people off this medication. And now we have this big problem. And so part of it is the provider's fault by not being smart enough to know what's right or wrong. And part of it is the pharmaceutical companies and these committees that are biased, that recommend what we should do to take care of patients with certain chronic problems such as pain.
Do you have a specific case where someone has gotten addicted to opioids? Or?
Oh yeah, I mean, I got a lady whose son who had his knee surgery, and that he got these pain pills for his knee, got addicted to them, and ended up addicted to OxyContin, and ended up overdosing and killing himself. He was 20-some years old. Yep. And this is nothing new. I mean, you can find these stories all over the place. And yet, medicine hasn't said anything and raised their hand and said, I'm guilty, this is our fault for following these recommendations and listening to these pharmaceutical companies. Nobody wants to take the responsibility for making bad decisions. Yeah, so.
So if you hadn't become a PA, what would you be doing now?
Probably, I mean, if I was naive at the time, instead of being a PA, I probably would have went on to be a physician. Yeah. I can remember my parents, and their friends would talk about, seeing the doctor, and this person had something wrong, and nobody could figure out what it was, and so I was going to be this superhero that would figure this stuff out. Yeah. And so then during the Vietnam War, my draft number was 110 or something like that, and so I thought, well, I don't want to be drafted, and so then I tested and put in for a air corpsman, a medical corpsman, and I was stationed in Japan at the time, and my dad was a dairy farmer, and then he ended up having a major heart attack, and he didn't get well quickly, and ended up to having pacemaker and bypass, and so then I put in for a hardship discharge because of his health, and so then that's when I started going back to school full time. And then with my younger brother, who was still in high school, we ran the farm, And so then, I abandoned my want to go to medical school, and I went to PA program instead.
See how thick the yolk is, or the white. So it's really got to be beat.
When I first started in this business, I didn't know for sure if the whole entity of a physician's assistant would continue. There were times when I thought it was not going to last. It was going to, be absorbed, and we'll go on like we were before. But I think one of the reasons it did last is because we were economically
a feasible solution for the healthcare industry. We can deliver medication or medical care, a high quality medical care, and we can do it cheaper than the traditional way we've delivered medical care. And a lot of the things that can be delivered through medical care, you don't need a physician to do it. It can be done by mid-levels, and I think that's part of why we've existed.
A little thick on the meat. And the cheese. Is this healthy? No. Nobody knows.
Enjoy my work, that's why I'm still in it, and at my age that I still go to work every day and enjoy it is because yeah, I feel like it's worthwhile, and I like to listen to people's problems and try to give them some direction so that they do have a healthy, long life, and it pays off. There's always those times when people come back and appreciate what you did for them, or sometimes you don't even know what you did for people and they come back and say, you remember, and you don't even remember telling them that or giving them that advice, and they come back later and thank you for that,
There you go, duck ache from work, goes back to work.
Energy to take care of your patients.
The energy to take care of my patients. Any leftover cholesterol medication I use.
And what was the impetus behind starting the program? Why?
Well, the government was looking forward and foreseeing that there would be a shortage on physicians, and our people are getting older and older and need more care and cure. So they foresaw a shortage on one side, but the other side was that they were thinking, well, our care costs a lot of money, and we see that a lot of physicians who are highly trained are doing a lot of work which could be easily done by people with another education on another level. But that really, the idea came from the government. So they made this plan of starting this program, introducing the PA, and they found 2 programs in the Netherlands, in Utrecht and in Nijmegen. And they developed the idea and made this program. So in the Netherlands, you can't apply for the program, you have to apply for a job as a PA in education. So you have to find yourself a physician that wants to train you for 2.5 years. And then you follow a program which you do rotations 2 days a week at all main specialties. You visit school 1 day a week, and you work 2 days a week as a PA at that specialism with that specialist. So from the beginning you work as a PA student. And after 2.5 years you get your master's degree, but then you also have your registration as a physician assistant.
The main goal, I think, of our program is that we learn our students to rethink about clinical problems. Most of our students are nurses, some are physical therapists, so we got a kind of range of professionals, health professionals, but they all need to change their way of thinking, and so they need to learn medical reasoning.
You have to grow out of your nursing role and get into the more doctor role, and especially with your own colleagues, which are the other nurses, and now you have to tell them what to do. But I think it actually went pretty smooth to go there. I didn't feel any troubles with that actually. So I don't.
Almost stepping into a new culture. You have to learn another language, another way thinking about problems, another way of behavior. So there's a lot to learn. Those are the parts we don't learn in school. You have to do that on the floor. So that's really hard work, I guess.
So what makes you feel good about this job? I mean,
yeah, it makes me feel good. Well, I do like the part that we can do some practical things like bone marrow punctions and like the central venous lines. And on the other side, if you want to do some researching, or there's space for everything. Yeah, and I just like to help the patients. I mean, we have people we make they survive, and some don't, and even if they don't, then there's so much trust they have in you that you can help them guide to their death, to their dying. Yeah, so that's what I do like about my job.
Even met deze uitslag hoor. En als je wil kun je met
What kind of patients do you normally have? Then mostly elderly? Or?
I see all patients, so young babies to very old people. I visit people that are very ill at home. I help people when they are nearly going to die, and to give palliation therapy. Yeah, so in this practice there's actually not a big difference between the patient that I see or the physician sees. This is like our standard room for a physician. We have a department for investigations and for little surgical techniques over here. What I was talking about is that we have a relatively large building for an average general practitioner practice. And that's because we want to combine more functions together and work together with other healthcare workers.
Here, when you look at people, they take pretty good care of themselves here.
Yeah, it seems. Behind those behind those curtains. Now, if you compare it to other countries like the US, people are less obese. They smoke less, they drink less. But it is increasing also here. So we're getting more and more diabetics problems. Maybe we are a very prosperous country. Our economy is rising. Reasonably, not too much very poor people, although that is also increasing. And healthcare is available for everybody. So yes, we are doing quite well, but our problems are increasing.
Are you really busy here? Or?
We are really busy, yeah.
Because of aged people or new people moving here?
Aging and new people and new people moving in. We have relatively more refugees coming over here, and but it's mainly because we think that a part of the care that is given in a hospital can be done more efficient when it's done in primary care and cheaper.
Wanneer zij die brief krijgen, begint na te denken. Dat die mensen dus wel bewust donor kunnen zijn, dat de vraag voorgelegd wordt aan de familie.
Not all Dutch have big noses.
So why did you get knighted?
Do we really have to talk about that? Somebody thought that would be a good idea. What happened that I, with a small group of students, we found that there was no legislation, there was not a professional organization, there was not a professional profile. We had nothing when we started as students. So when you're among the first people, you have to start walking. And then you get enthusiastic and you like this, being an ambassador and being a pioneer. So then you can't step back, you have to go on. And then you are really going for legislation, and you are really going for recognition of the profession. Well, then it takes some spare time. Yeah, it takes some. So that's what you do.
So what do you do in your free time then?
Well, you ask it my wife. Yeah. No, I'm still quite busy with the PA profession in the Netherlands still. And I work here about 3.5 days, and I work 2 days in the PA program in Nijmegen.
Is climate change going to really affect the Netherlands?
Yeah, since we live for an important part underneath sea level.
Right.
And so all kind of measurements are taken to anticipate on that. You might not see it, but when you go over the bridge to Nijmegen, maybe in daytime you have a better look. They broadened the river to to keep us dry, because we between the water from the sea and on the other side we get all the melting water from Germany and Switzerland.
Oh, right. Yeah, I was wondering if the rivers would back up some, so they widened them, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I forgot my. I had a book with photos. I wasn't wearing a tie that day. And my wife knew what was going to happen. I was not aware that they were going to honor me with the night thing. So I was really planning to go in my travel suit, but then she really asked me to put on my suit, but I didn't put on a tie. The next moment I was standing there in the big football stadium where the mayor of my town came, and well, I was really shocked. So they don't knight you with a sword here. It's just they put on this cross and that's it. Yeah. That is family. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Enough? Well, you go first, Guest. The guest goes first.
Yeah. I take enough. Take more than enough because they don't.
Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, cool. I'm just tweeting a minister, government who's now back in, which is fantastic. I was delighted this guy's back in to regulate our profession. So sorry, multitasking, Adam.
Face some opposition from doctors, like junior doctors or general practitioners or nurse practitioners?
Not really, I don't know. It's been really, I think our numbers, we started small and it's like small acorns, you know, you plant small acorns, great trees, and eventually it kind of seeps out and builds up. And actually in doing it that way, I think we've done the profession right. You know, now we've got a massive increase in numbers coming through. So with the big increase in numbers, people then, you know, you then become visible, don't you, with the increase, and therefore that's when people start thinking, oh, well, what about us, or what about this, or what about that? So, but not massive opposition, not yet. People have concerns. I think that's absolutely right. You can answer their questions, but we're not, we're not here to replace anybody. We're not here to, you know, take anyone's jobs or anyone's training opportunities. We're here to, you know, redistribute the workload of this health service. It is just on its knees. It's beyond on its knees, you know, and PAs are, that's what we're about, providing good medical care to patients. So. So we have this, I said to someone earlier on, you know, we have this sort of perfect storm evolving in the UK where we don't have enough of any workforce. We've got increasing demand in service. We run a 24/7 service, you know, and actually we've always run a 24/7 service, but just at the weekends and in the evenings it's reduced, but it still exists, and actually people still have to work in those services. And what PA is doing is bringing in new people into healthcare. So we're taking biomedical graduate students in the main, and I think we graduate some between 16 and 18,000 of those per year in the UK, Adam. And we're taking those people who are smart, who have the academic capability of learning medicine in 2 years. And it isn't all of medicine we're trying to deliver either. It's, you know, it's the common and important things.
So I actually, in my final year of university, there was a teacher that was teaching hematology. And he mentioned in like one sentence in one of the lectures that he was a physician associate. And I was like, okay, what is that? Sleepy, confused, so I need to look sleepy. Confused, dry hair, hair loss, loss of outer third eyebrow, dry palms. Okay, so we'll do that? Yeah. Cool. Sounds good. It's been a while now. I've just been feeling kind of low and just I don't understand what's happening to my body. I'm just not feeling well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So how long has this been going on for?
I'd say
So we have a PBL, which is problem-based learning, once a week. So we get given a new case. So we spend about 2 hours discussing a clinical scenario, so a pretend patient. And then we have learning objectives that we go away and work on over the week.
Yeah.
So that's really helpful. I find that's like the best way to learn.
I agree, and coming back and discussing the learning objectives, and some people find something so interesting that you've missed, and it really aids your learning, talking through it all, doesn't it?
Yeah, because we all get different information, so it's so good having those few hours where we're discussing
and
it.
also that because some people actually have experiences, so they've seen, let's say if they've done nursing in the past and they've seen a patient like that, and when they tell stories, it retains your mind a bit more, doesn't it?
Yeah. My work experience is actually mainly in Brazil.
Can you talk about Brazil?
Yeah, it's very, very different. It's a lot more relaxed there. I was so surprised at how easily I got work experience. I just met a nurse and I told her, I would love to get some experience in the hospital. And she was like, okay, I'll call a doctor. She called a doctor and was like, I have a friend that wants to, go to the hospital. And he was like, yeah, just tell her to come in. So I went in to his office, I met him. He's a cardiologist. And he was like, yeah, I'm in on Thursdays and Fridays at this hospital. You can just come meet me and I'll show you around. And I had the most amazing time. I turned up every week for about 10 weeks. And he showed me everything. He introduced me to all the doctors in every kind of speciality. So I went through, nephrology. I did cardiology, acute medicine, surgery. But it's crazy because I just turned up and they let me see everything.
So I have to ask you this. Have you ever made yourself sick, Jessica?
No, I haven't.
Okay. That's great. And so you say you've gained a few pounds as well, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And this has this life event ever occurred before? Symptoms?
No.
Okay. This is so tricky. Hypothyroidism?
Yeah.
Is it hypothyroidism?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Hey.
Awesome.
I absolutely love the feeling when you get the diagnosis right.
Oh, yes.
Yes, we've actually, it's something's actually gone
Yeah.
Yes.
When you can answer the questions that your supervisor asks. I know that.
And they're like, well done. Yeah, once they're well done, it's like, you feel so elated.
It feels so good. But healthcare is very, very different in Brazil to how it is here. It's a lot, obviously they don't have the NHS, so it's a big struggle. Like you see a big separation with the rich and the poor, which you don't see here. Over here, you go into, you know, a hospital, a ward, and you can't tell, you know, what status somebody has. Over there, it's quite clear with what status they have.
How do you know?
Just depending. I'd say sometimes a lot of the doctors will treat patients differently because it is a lot about money over there as well. You'll see in their like what wards they're put in, or you know, whether they have a private room. A lot of the rooms are very kind of cramped together. It could be that it's the hospital that I was in as well, but yeah, you do see a big difference there. So that is something, coming here and having experience here, I've got a big admiration for UK healthcare system.
You spoke about something this morning about some opposition from...
Oh, it's sensationalism from the journalists, isn't it? You know, where they they sell papers, that's their job. So 3,000 PAs, you know, in general practice they're half-price doctors, all that sort of rubbish, and that's not new, that's an old story, they've rehashed. So either they were really desperate for something to put in the front paper this morning, because obviously the papers were out before the fire broke out this morning, but that has, you know, I think taken away the focus from their front page this morning. So I think that will, you know, the fire this morning in the Tower Rise is obviously taken over all the media. I think you can bring, I suppose we are cheaper in the long term to employ than you would employ a doctor. So I think in real terms, yes, you know, it is cost saving, but actually I think it's cost saving if you employ a team of PAs, because actually you can provide a full service. You know, you still have your doctors, you still have your nurses, you still have your healthcare assistants and everyone else who needs to exist to make that whole team work. But yeah, we will always work with our supervising physicians. But I think, you know, that this is like the apprenticeship model. It's like, you know, Obi-Wan Kenobi and his master is his master apprenticeship model. But in terms of initially when you're a new graduate, that will be a very close supervision model. And as you get more experience, you become then that extension of your physician, which is no different to the US model at all here in the UK.
And I remember my question. So you're here at the Royal College of Physicians.
Yes.
Why?
So we do have full support from the Royal College of Physicians. We are the first non-doctor faculty within the Royal College, and they have their 500th anniversary next year. So a faculty being a group of people, it's not like individual faculty members at a university, but it's a organization, so Faculty of Physician Associates, and they made that offer to us to become a faculty at the RCP, which was an amazing step.
So do you get invited to their party?
We do sometimes go to some of the social events, and we have our annual conference is held here currently, although with the numbers that we're expecting to graduate over the next few years, the venue will no longer be large enough for us, which is in itself really exciting. When I see our cohorts now at St. George's, right, I had 68 people start last year. Well, that was more than 50% of my total number of graduates at that point. And more than twice as many total PAs there were in 2007 when I came. You know, we had about 30, and I had 68 students start last year. So it's very rewarding to see the growth and how the profession is developing in the UK.
Yeah, no, those have been amazing things, you know, formation of our faculty, the formation of our profession to start with, you know, in terms of our professional body. So, you know, our national examination, getting people through that, you know, our students are a real testament to the work that they put in. So I think every student that qualifies and graduates through the national examination is another moment of fantasticness, I suppose that's even a word. I think our PAs, the work they're doing, the stories they're telling us, you know, about good quality patient care, about their own achievements, you know, it's just brilliant. And forging pathways and forging relationships. It's just, I mean, there's so much to sing about and to be thankful for. The moments of deep depression and despair have been around again. Regulation, we're almost there, and all of a sudden it comes crashing down. Or our media, our sensationalism. You know, it's like, let's tell some good stories about what we're doing. You know, let's not divide the professional groups, let's bring them together. It's about patient care, and it's about providing that care. And I think for me that has to be centre of everything that we do. And we're not just paying lip service to that, it's about doing it.
נגד הטבע.
אני לא זוכר. מה? קוראים משהו?
הסיקור של ה-CA?
I used to volunteer in MADA, which is a emergency ambulance. And a friend of mine told me, let's go and volunteer. So I said, okay, why not? So we did this one-year course where you become an ambulance driver. And we started our training, and we both went on this call, and she saw a little blood and she lost conscience, she fainted. And she stopped her volunteer and I stayed. Then I started working in that company and became a paramedic and an instructor.
You just slowly worked your way up.
Yeah.
For paramedics here in Israel, for many years, there was like a glass ceiling above their head. And somebody who did the paramedic training and spent 3 years in a university and, practiced paramedicine for a few years, if they wanted to change a career, it was very difficult for them. Some went to nursing, some went to other professions, not even medicine. But this physician assistant program is now giving them another opportunity to continue in the same profession, in the same way they did for so many years and they spent so much time. It gives them the opportunity now to grow further and to pursue something more challenging.
How do you think you did?
He passed, and he passed, of course. We passed away. I have to think if he passed or not. I don't know.
We wait for the results.
Yeah, the results are going to be in a few days. And after that, we have a practical test as well.
You seem to have a wide range of experience. You must have a lot of experience, and maybe.
We all been paramedics for a few years. Yeah, about 15 years.
Yeah.
15 years and more. Yeah.
We have experience in the clinic side.
So that helps you out quite a bit. Yeah.
Very much.
Yeah. Okay.
But not in the academic part.
There was a 60-year-old patient who came here with stroke signs, came with an ambulance, and I started managing him. I asked the secretary to hold the CT. I talked to the neurologist. I didn't wait for someone to take him. I took him myself after doing the examination. And we went straight to CT. And I met the neurologist at the CT. And after doing the CT, we decided to take him straight to the stroke unit and give him treatment. So in the evening I got a nice call from the hospital which said that there's no neurologic deficit. So
you felt you helped him out?
Yeah.
Does that feel different than from when you, let's say, worked in an ambulance setting? Or?
Here it's different. Most of the patients are stable. On the ambulance, a lot of the patients are unstable. So it's more intense.
Do you like them less intense better? Or?
No, I do them both.
Yeah.
In my free time, I volunteer in the ambulance. We open an ALS ambulance, and we do
You do both?
We do both, yeah.
You must be very busy then, no? No, it's my free time. I enjoy doing it. Okay.
It's like, I think it's a bug. You get it, then you can't dispose it.
זה קריטי, את יודעת, אנחנו מנסים, תראי, גם היא לא ממש דוברת עברית, אבל את יודעת, אני חושב שהם ילמדו.
So what are you going to do over these next 3 years? I mean, how many classes do you hope to graduate?
We basically, we are ready to do the next training in October, and if we are going to have the 100 positions that we wanted to have in the emergency medicine department, we're not going to open the third one. I think that their success in the field will probably lead the university to start, offer the program for a master's degree, probably.
So is there going to be a master's degree?
I think so.
You don't?
Well, I hope so. I think that the way that we did this training is basically just to start, to get this profession actually familiarized, in medicine, and to get the ball rolling. That was the idea. We did it correctly. I mean, like, the training is very intensive, and the amount of hours that they spend is almost as like in the university. So it's basically going to be very professional. Well, but I still think that it needs to be academic. So I hope it's going to happen soon.
Yeah, a lot of the students said they need more book learning. They said
yes. They need more time. I think the students, actually, I can't say suffered me, but they trained very hard. Personally, I think that it's not easy to do such an extensive training within 1 year. That normally takes 2.5 years. Yeah, so they did it, and most of them have families, wife, kids, even parents they need to take care of. So it's not easy. It's something that is very, very demanding. So also they deserve a big thank you, and for continuing and always studying and questions and everything.
So, how did you do on the test?
I passed.
Are you officially a PA then?
No, there's still the Husky test.
What's this?
You need to sit with the 2 emergency medicine specialists,
they're like introducing a case to you, and you need to say what test you're gonna do, what do you expect, how are you gonna manage this thing.
Okay, so it's kind of more like an oral test.
Yeah. I think in medicine, it's like a vast ocean of knowledge. I don't think it ever ends.
When I was in grade school, I used to love science courses, biology, physics, chemistry, and then mathematics. I was very good at those 4 courses in grade school. So I always used to tell my parents, I want to be a medical doctor. So my parents were like, okay, you continue. Yeah. But I went through a lot of difficulties. My mom fell ill when I was 12 years. She was very ill. And unfortunately, I was 5 years when my mom and my dad separated. Yeah, so my dad had a different wife, and my mom was ill. She was not in a position to really help. I grew up under difficult situations, especially during refugee days, because I was a refugee in Guinea, the Republic of Guinea. I was in Guinea. During the 14 years of civil crisis in Liberia, I was a refugee in Guinea. So being a refugee and having your both parents are no longer together, so many a time things were very difficult. But good of it, during the refugee time, we were not paying school fees. Education was free. The international community, through IRC, was providing free education So I was in a school that I was not paying fees, but just to go to school. But you will not believe that many days I will come from school without getting meal to eat. I have to go to other friends in a community, and if they are working for their parents, I join them to work, so that when their parents provide food for them and they share with me. So when I completed my high school, I said to myself, yes, I still need to pursue my dream. Yeah, but there was no assistance from anywhere. I couldn't get assistance from anywhere. So I was like, okay, that can't stop me. So I managed to enroll in a vocational institution where I did auto mechanic. I studied auto mechanic for 2 years, and I worked as a mechanic for like 2 years. But then while working as a mechanic, there was this spirit that kept telling me, this is not your calling. You need to leave this field and get back to your calling. And I kept telling myself, yes, this is not my calling. So I resigned from where I was working as an auto mechanic, and they were paying me $50 United States dollars per month. It was nothing, but I had to manage it. So in 2005, at the time the Tubman National Institute was giving a placement exam, I decided to write the exam. With the little money I had, just around $250, I paid for the entrance fee. I wrote the exam and kept praying to God. God, help me. I want to be a medical practitioner. Yeah. And as God could have it, I was successful. My name came out. I enrolled in Clin-A October 2005. And I managed to go through the various stages of the study. As God could have it, I didn't have any hindrance during my time of study. Every semester, all of my courses, I was passing all of my courses every semester. So in 2009, I managed to graduate from Clin-A as a physician assistant. Sometime in March 2013, the Ebola viral disease hit Liberia. I was in the position of doing advocacy. I was advocating on behalf of healthcare providers in general to the international community to provide personal protective equipment for healthcare providers to be protected while they are providing care to the patients. I was also advocating to the international community to provide incentives and better compensation for those healthcare providers who are risking their lives on catering to the Ebola patients. And I was also involved in visiting a lot of healthcare institutions, making sure that healthcare providers who are there are actually on job and taking care of patients. So it was a very hectic situation for me. Many days I didn't sleep at home. I was always in the dark, moving from one health facility to another health facility, moving from one radio station to another radio station, advocating and ensuring that healthcare providers stay in their various hospitals and health facilities to cater to the patients. Yeah.
Was that a difficult time for you to be out and like that? I mean, it must have been kind of scary.
Yeah. The difficult time for me, actually, when I served as the president of the Physician Assistant Association, was that on many occasions, numerous occasions, my colleagues were calling me that they were not getting their salaries. They needed me to have talked to the government, the Ministry of Health, to pay their salaries on time. Many a time, these physician assistants are in the most remote part of the country where they don't have internet access. Some places they don't even have, it's not possible for them to even communicate to their relatives on mobile phone. And in these rural places, they were also compelled to provide lodging for themselves, paying rent, and the rest of the feeding themselves. And you will not believe that sometimes 2-3 months, they will not get salary. So they were actually stranded. My lines were always hard. People calling, Jerry, you need to talk for us. We are stranded. There is no food. There is no money to pay our rent. We need to see the patients. There is no drugs in the health facilities. And it was a very hectic situation.
If you were to go into the isolation centers right now, you will see the number of our colleagues, health workers, who are now lying in isolation centers there from the infectious Ebola virus. How many have died? Yet we are willing to go out there to fight. And yet we go hungry and come back home hungry.
So what happens on the workflow is the voice of the workers are never heard. Our masters, our bosses do not want this thing to change because they are the ones who are supposed to provide trainings, in-service trainings for the workers. They are the ones who are supposed to provide the necessary working conditions. They're supposed to provide the workers the tools and everything that makes working easy. But they are not doing that. And because they know if they allow us to speak, then the people will know exactly that these things are supposed to be done and they are not being done by the government. So what they instead do is they continue to make it look as if everything is well on the workflow. But things are not well on the workflow, and that is the situation we have in Liberia. And as a result of that, when the Ebola came, too many of our colleagues died. As you can see on the list in here, you see Liberia. There's a lot of health workers who died from Liberia of Ebola because of lack of protective equipment. The workers knew there were no protective equipment, and we were all calling for protective equipment. But nobody listened to us because they didn't want to dialogue with us. They wanted the world to think that everything was perfect in the health sector in Liberia, but that was not the case.
I got infected from a colleague of mine, a nurse. I can remember it was on a Friday night. I was on duty, and I met her in the ER, and I was like always going closer to her, doing her assessment, and I didn't know that I was playing with danger. And so after a few days, this lady died, and she was tested positive, of the Ebola virus disease.
One specific patient I interacted with, he was very ill, and I helped establish IV, and he died of the disease. So it was kind of alarming and frightening for us, for those who provided care for him.
About 10 days, I started experiencing those constitutional signs: fever, joint pain, abdominal pain. I mean, the temperature continued to go up to 40, 41. I called my supervisor and said, I think I need to go to the ETU. And he said to me, you need to take some malaria pills and you'll be okay.
So I did the malaria rapid diagnostic test, and it was positive for malaria. So I started experiencing weakness 2 days after taking the malaria medicine, and the headache was still consistent. So I wanted to go to one of the Ebola treatment units to get tested. But each time I would bring the idea, I would suggest the idea to my parents. I mean, they would flinch it away because the issue of Ebola at the time, the stigma was so very high.
And I mean, nobody, for the fact that community members know that you are in the ET, in fact, your family is totally been isolated. No one wants to speak to your family, and they call your family names, and you yourself being in the community, they call you by names. Oh, that Ebola boy, Ebola man, Ebola woman, Ebola girl. More besides, getting Ebola was not by, just a choice, okay? 99.9% of people who came down with Ebola were people that were providing care. They were helping someone.
There were fewer ambulances in the country at that time responding to the Ebola outbreak. So normally if you call for the ambulance, it's going to take like several days or even maybe a week. What I decided to do, I wore a long sleeve shirt. I looked for a glove. And I called up as much as possible so as not to infect anyone while in the process of going to seek care at the Ebola treatment unit. I chatted or texted, and when I was sitting in the front seat, my fiancée was at the back and the driver. I was sick, honestly, because I've been having like almost 2 days diarrhea at home. So when I went to the ELA hospital, the ET rather, I met the guys there and I got down. I displayed to them my lessons as a PA. They couldn't accept me. Yeah, I was downhearted, but what could I do? So on the 4th day again, it was November 10th, I chartered another taxi, and I went back to the same ETU. I underwent treatment for like 2 weeks, and I mean, I came so very near, close to death.
For me, I was like admitted on the 28th of June at the GFK, at the old chloride unit. We had a chloride unit here, and I was actually released from that area on the 16th of July, 2014. And after my own release, we have been engaged in a lot of our activities. We also took the responsibility to go back and serve our people, looking at people dying. But we believe that we are some way immune to the virus, so we'll be less at risk to take care of those who are infected. And so a lot of us, including him, a lot of survivors, PAs, went back and started to provide clinical care, psychosocial, health education, awareness, stigma and discrimination, and I mean so on. Actually, I did not want to be a survivor, okay? And I don't think anyone would like to be a survivor. But you would like to be a survivor when you are infected. Yeah, so you see that once you are infected, you want to be a survivor, but I never want to be a survivor. So I always told people that, for people who sometimes look down on Ebola survivors, I always told people this, and I think we can all live together, and we can do better, in one accord.
It's just that PAs have become so essential to the system. You see the physician assistants providing service in areas where many doctors would not want to go, in remote areas, in very low resource areas. They are very dedicated and committed to what they do. So they are very essential to our system. Without the PAs in our system, we would really have a major challenge. Yeah.
How far way back do we go?
Yeah.
Just a bit of an overview. Do you know the beginning?
I mean, you probably know the beginning more than we do. We know it as far as when we started.
Well, the clinical associate profession started in South Africa in 2008, right with the first class attending Waldseele University. And then the next class was at University of Pretoria, later that year, 2008. And then here at University of Witwatersrand, we started the class in 2009. The first graduates then began working in South Africa in 2011. Now there was quite a bit of work leading up to that. In 2005, there was a task team started with National Department of Health and with provinces, Departments of Health, and with academics and different stakeholders to create a mid-level health profession, which South Africa didn't have at the time. And then they followed the physician assistant kind of model, and they set up an undergraduate degree program here, even though in the United States it's a master level program, knowing that probably in South Africa they'd move that direction. And it had lots of support from WHO and National Department of Health to help fund the first initial cohort of students. And VOA and Victor were both the first cohort of students here at University of Witwatersrand. You guys started 2009.
Great.
So what was your experience as students' first time in this program?
Okay, well for me, I didn't really know what it was about. And I just thought, okay, let me do it because it's still within healthcare and still within medicine. So I thought, because I want to help people, because I want to work in the hospital, I'm still sort of in the same field. And then we just started. And we're a very small class of 25.
Today we're going to do work on children's health, and we're teaching them about the integrated management of childhood illness, which is a protocol process to help treat children under 5 years old. There are 5 big mortality diseases that affect children, and this is one way we can identify that early so we can get the child the help they need before problems become too challenging, and it often becomes too late to help the children. But we're also right next to what is Soweto, which is a township that developed outside downtown Johannesburg. So this hospital is right next to one of the largest townships where there's a great population of people. So that also makes this hospital extremely busy. And this hospital is the second largest hospital in the world. I mean, there are different facts about why, but it has the incredible number of overnight beds in the wards. The emergency department is very busy. It sees lots of trauma patients. South Africa seems to have an undercurrent of quite a bit of violence that they often say is hanging over from the apartheid days. So on any given day, there'll be gunshot wounds, there'll be stabs, a lot of domestic violence, intimate partner violence. So our students are exposed to some opportunities here of really tremendous learning to do some emergency medicine work, also in the wards and HIV clinics, in the obstetric wards. Birth to 2 months, or are we working on 2 months to 5 years? You guys are familiar with both? You've done the recording forms of each? Yeah. Good, so whichever we see. Okay. Then we just want to introduce ourselves to the sisters. They know we're already coming. And then we want to identify ourselves to the patient and with the mother. And ask the mothers, it's fine if we interview, because we'll probably be most of the questions with mom. And then we have the opportunity, if they allow us, to examine the child. And then we can follow along with the recording form as we go. And the idea is that you guys would produce a recording form. I have here an evaluation sheet of you going through the process. Sound good? Now we hope that there'll be enough patients for everyone. We just need to find at least 3 patients. We'll see how it works. Are we ready? All right, shall we? Okay, you're holding the door.
So you mentioned this about people leaving, and then so some people don't go all the way through with it, or
Maybe 6% of the students that start don't finish the academic program, which is typical, and it's actually a small number compared to other academic programs. And then of those that practice, about 5% want to go on to further studies and maybe leave to go to another profession to study or elsewhere. About 4% are going into academics, like you guys to come train. And then we know about 6% go into nonprofit work, and maybe another 6% are starting to go into private work. Whereas then 80% will go for the government, which is the biggest provider of healthcare in South Africa, biggest employer of healthcare.
Yeah, I mean, I think the clinical associates who leave, I mean, these are young school leaving. It's a young school leaving group, so anyone wants, what do you call it? You want to be settled, or you want, what do you call it now?
Stability.
Stability. They want stability. So they're thinking about their families and the salary. So others are quick to leave and go into other professions, or quick to jump into private because of, in South Africa, you know, you want stability and.
So what do you do here at Bertha?
Betakoa Hospital, the former Germiston Hospital. Okay, I work in internal medicine, which is an adult ward. I work in the female ward now, and also assist, but now recently also doing cesarean sections on my own. Yeah, that's what I do.
Cesareans?
Cesarean sections, yes.
And how is it going?
Good, fine. Work is good, yeah.
So where do you think you'll go from here? What's your goal?
Honestly, I'm looking to leave the field because I'm happy working. I'm happy doing my work. I'm just not happy about all the other things that are on the side. Salary, lack of appreciation. You know, there's so much. There's no growth. There's no academic growth currently. Well, close to no growth academically because there's only that one program at Wits for emergency medicine. What about the rest of us that don't want to do emergency medicine but have other specialities? So there's no growth academically. There's no growth financially. There's no recognition from our health department. So that pains me as much as I love what I'm doing, but when I go home, you know, and I want to grow. I'm not getting any younger, so.
So basically here it's a general practice. So we just see patients. It's like it actually functions more like a clinic, if I can say so. So we see patients and then we diagnose and then we treat. But if it's a major condition, then we refer. Like just right now, I just saw a patient with what do you call this, meningeocele. So it was an interesting case for me to see, and then I spoke to my supervisor, who's a GP, and then we were able to tackle the case properly, and then we had to refer the case. Okay, so this is an actual structure of the womb. There's the womb over there on the side, and then from there, then there's the placenta inside there, and then there's the fetus. So this is the spine of the fetus. The spine will connect there to the head. So the skull over there is totally gone. So because even we can't even see any other facial features of some sort. So yeah.
And what would cause that?
Pardon?
What causes that? I mean,
actually, it's what do you call that? It's a congenital abnormality.
So how is the healthcare system structured here?
There's this big inequity of health provision in South Africa. If you have money to afford a medical aid, which is like health insurance, or if you work for an employer that can provide you that, then you can go see the private doctors and pay substantially more, but also get deductions through the medical aid scheme. But if you don't have either of those, then you can go to any government health facility and receive free care or very minimal charges for certain procedures. But there's real inequity of that distribution and what's provided, because the government health sector has very few money and resources to hire doctors, to retain doctors, to hire clinical associates, to hire nurses, to hire and staff it, and to have the resources available. You're running out of medicines.
quite often.
Quite often.
Of sterile packs, quite often. You're not able to run your theaters. Whereas then this side gets all of that resources, but only 20% of the population. And so now, in the last 6 years, there's been a movement to try to equalize this with the National Health Insurance Scheme, the NHI. And so is that all South Africans will be provided with health coverage, and they can go to the private sector or the public sector. And the idea was to bring up the public sector so it meets the same provisions as the private. And so they're going to have to redistribute these resources, as you're talking about, and pull money away from private to start putting more into public. And they're going to have private doctors starting to work more in public, and public facilities accepting private facilities accepting what was public patients at that time. So there's this real move to try to mix this. It's going to be a challenge, but they're working towards it. NHI is now a nationally embraced scheme and has phases to go forward, offering kind of general 16 services of healthcare needs, from pediatrics to maternity to surgical to et cetera, et cetera. This is a private clinic set up in Soweto, and it's run by clinical associates who provide health care to the citizens of the area. Tell us more about it.
Okay, this clinic, it was opened in the 1st of March this year, 2017. Okay. And basically, yeah, it's just to give quality health care to the citizens, yes.
Because, I mean, otherwise people have the government healthcare system to go to, which offers basic services at a very low price, but often resources are difficult, or staff is not always there, or there's long queues, or people have to have money to get health insurance or medical aid schemes to go to the private, which often is difficult. So this fills this need in the middle. And tell us how the clinical associates work. What do they do here?
Clinical associates mainly here see patients. Okay. They will be taking history, assessing patients, also doing clinical exam, and then if needs be refer, we have good relationship with surrounding hospitals that always talk to them in terms of when we try to refer patients. So we have a good relationship with the surrounding hospitals that we have to use.
So the doctors at the hospital say, oh, I know you as a clinical associate, you're seeing a patient, Quality Health, we're glad to take this patient and continue care. Yes. And then I also see you have a pharmacy here?
Yes, this is the pharmacy area. Normally what happens is the patient will come through, and then when they come through, the maintainer will help them, guide them to the receptionist. After they register with it, they go straight to our vital nurses. After vital nurses, they go to the bill area. Okay. After going to the bill area, then they will go further to the clinical site. Yes.
Oh, great. And tell me, how many patients are you seeing a month?
A month, roughly, we see about 1,000 plus patients.
All right, let's go see some of the clinical associates. You're good, Hapiwe. No, because remember, he can edit this.
Yeah, I graduated in 2013, so I've been working since 2014, actually. Started out in a government hospital, which is very different to this setting. Very, very different.
How so?
Yeah. In terms of the biggest one that stands out, workload. Biggest difference there. In government, it's a little harder because they don't really know us. They don't know what we're doing. So it's always that thing of you need to first explain what we're doing, and then there's all sorts of misunderstandings and people feeling threatened, mainly. Well, that's what I experienced, threatened about our profession.
So what do you see mostly here usually?
Here at this particular, I can't say we see something in particular. It's just a lot of stuff. It's just different things. I mean, most recently we've been seeing, which is actually upsetting, we've been seeing what we call, I don't know if you know about organophosphate poisonings, children that eat rat poison, like by accident and all that stuff. Yeah, and unfortunately a few of them have died, but then that's what we've been seeing, and I don't understand why, but it's just on the rise out of nowhere. But yeah, but otherwise we see a whole host of things.
Is there something unique about CAs? You have to be passionate or curious to really do well? Or?
I would say you would have, I personally think that you have to have some kind of passion for this, because it's so new, number one, and because of it being rural based. You trying to bring a difference, trying to bring a change. So you have to have that passion that you want to change something, that you want to help people. So at least some passion in that aspect somehow. Yeah, I think you'd need that. Yeah, most definitely.
And you take all age groups. I mean, young ladies up to the elderly.
Yes, but most of our clients are between the ages of 26 and 35.
26 and 35, okay.
Yes. And we see a lot of pregnant clients as well.
I'm really impressed.
Thank you.
I mean, I educated this guy.
Yeah.
And now look what he's done. So if a little bit of me is rubbed off, and look, he's like, woo, blossomed into this tree, this solid tree.
Why did you guys all get into this profession? When you're all PAs.
Oh, yes.
Why did you become PAs?
I give a different story all the time. So.
Why?
It's just because there's so many reasons. I think what I first said in Dr. Truscott's class that day, I think I said the story of yeah, there was we had at home, we had chickens. We had outside rooms, and there was a toilet outside. We used to sleep in there, in this outside rooms in the staff quarters. It's those traditional old housing. There was a toilet outside, so one of the chicks, or a couple of chicks, actually fell in the toilet, in the bowl there, and some of them drowned. I used to watch Baywatch with Pamela Anderson.
Oh yeah.
Goodness.
Back then, and I saw CPR for the first time in Baywatch, and I did CPR in a chick. On chicks. One survived, one died. One died, one survived.
You're resuscitated.
Oh my goodness.
I'm made for this.
That's great.
And when I performed CPR, or when I resuscitated a couple of patients at Carltonville, I remember it was the second one after I had completed my ACLS course. First one didn't go successfully, the second one was. And I thought, but I was made for this. And I realized this when I was 7 years old. So that's why we're here. I'm here because of a chick that I did CPR on.
Save lives. That's great.
Initially, yes, we were we were very happy to say that I'm a PA, blah blah blah, all those things. But then, after 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, still if you are asked the same question, it was really irritating at that point in time. And now also, certain sections of the medical fraternity, they do not know who a PA is. And the most important thing is people, in the seat of power, in the government, they also do not know who a PA is. So again, we are explaining the same things to them. If you take the community as such, still people do not know about a PAs. That is another challenge,
You can't even introduce yourself to someone. If you say that you're PA, then again, what is that? Come on. Then you start explaining what it is.
Yeah.
It doesn't just go with a simple handshake or a namaste. You start to explain, try to,
and
get them understand.
In spite of explaining, they'll ask whether you are a doctor or a nurse.
No, I've not completed my point. What I'm trying to say is, a lot of people have been involved in designing this particular curriculum.
The government is planning to have a Allied Health Professionals Council, wherein they would want to, regulate 59 allied health courses which are running in this country. They asked us to give a model curriculum, and then we were asked to, have a task force. So now the ministry actually has one more task. It has to constitute a National Curriculum Review Committee, NCRC, National Curriculum Review Committee. So this draft will be sent to that committee, and that committee will discuss and deliberate upon the draft, and whatever changes are recommended by that committee will have to be incorporated in this draft, and then this will go to the parliament for discussion and debate, and finally a bill will be passed. And once the bill is passed, the council will be formed. So it will take some time.
Allied healthcare professionals, and the content alone varies because physician assistants have to know a little more about community medicine.
And the difference between the other allied health professions that we are mentioning and the PAS, they are at least recognized as a profession. No one objects to it. So in some places, the accreditation body objects to physician assistants as a healthcare workforce. But I don't think that happens to a speech therapist or an optometrist and all that. So at least as a profession, they are recognized. Only that their education system is not standardized. So it becomes easier for them. But for physician assistant, it's altogether a different task because you are paraclinical over here. That is one challenge that you have to overcome, to convince others that we are not a threat to the other professions. We are just complementing each other's services. And the second thing is, if it is recognized as a profession, there's something that can be done from there. So we have to work a lot for this. The challenge is more for the physician assistant profession than any other profession here.
True. Miles and miles to go before we go to sleep.
That's Robert Frost.
Yeah. So I'm just reminded of Robert Frost. Basically, it's like, whether the chicken came from the egg or the egg came from the chicken.
Is that Robert Frost too?
No, certainly not. Whether to, produce more PAs and, go for recognition, or whether to get recognition and, produce more PAs. So that's a $1 billion question. But I would suggest that, both things should happen parallelly.
Actually, basically, I was interested in taking up surgery. That was my ambition. But due to some unfortunate incidents, I had to take a diversified field. And now I'm working for the past 9 years into the cadaver transplant program of Tamil Nadu.
Just explain what happened.
In the year 2004, I was just traveling in an auto. A lorry came and hit my hand. I was holding the sidebar, and it was a major crush injury to my right hand. They could not salvage my hand, so 4 of my fingers were chopped off, and day-to-day activities became very difficult. But still, God gave me strength and stamina to do all my activities in my left hand, except for my surgical skills, which I lost.
Was that a disappointment that you couldn't do surgery?
Yeah, definitely it was a disappointment, sir. But life doesn't end there. There are a lot of avenues as a PA. Clinical research organizations also recruit them. So this accident should not be a limitation. It's only our mindset.
This is what my boss tells me. So if you can harvest conduits for bypass surgery, why can't you harvest a donor heart for a transplant? So we are one of the most busiest transplant units in the country. And we do kind of around 70-75 transplants every year. There's something called the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. So we have to have as much length of both of it as possible. There's always a tussle for the inferior vena cava because usually the liver is also harvested. So they also need a bit of the inferior vena cava. So there's always a tussle between us and the liver surgeons as to how much we have to cut, how much they have to take. There have been times when we had reached the donor site. We were waiting there. This was a 4-year-old kid. So we were seeing for a 3-year-old kid. So it's difficult to get pediatric donors. A brain dead donor, size matching for a young kid. So this kid was very sick, quite sick, and was waiting for quite some time. So we have to make sure that it is mutual. We make a mutual understanding in the beginning that I'm going to cut here, just above the level of the diaphragm is mine, below the level of the diaphragm is yours. So sometimes in a kind of a frenzy, at that moment we tend to cut a little more, and they kind of get a little angry at us. Initially we went and assessed. The heart was very good, and it was kind of perfect match for this kid. This was a 3-year-old kid, 4-year-old. We thought, okay, jackpot. This kid is going to do well. This is very sick also. So that is where we do. So all the great vessels are chopped off, and the last to be cut out is the left atrium. So that is the posterior here, if you can see this area. So this roof part of it is left behind. And just at the level of pulmonary veins, we chop all the pulmonary veins and take out the heart. That's how we do it. By the time the process got over and the donor was ready to be shifted, the heart had completely deteriorated. So the function was too bad that it was not fit for harvesting. So this kid could not get that heart, and this kid didn't get any other matching heart. These things are not under our control. There's too many factors beyond our control.
providing care to more people, it would always be in the public healthcare sector, because they cater to a lot of people, and that is another challenge for them also, because it's not that easy to cater to a population at the size of India. So in terms of quality, private healthcare does better because it has the money, better infrastructure, and it can deliver because it's delivering only to a particular community which can afford to. So the public healthcare challenge is mainly because of the volume of patients. It's too high for them to handle, and how many hospitals they could open up. They need to have providers for that, and infrastructure, funding.
Even after 2 decades, we don't have that many PA schools in the country. And especially in the field of primary care, you require a lot of hands to achieve the health for all goals of 2020, then the SDG of 2030. You need a lot of, India is one of the signatories to it. So we need a lot of healthcare professionals, and physician assistants can play a major role in achieving these objectives.
You use the acronyms. Could you say what those are again? The
SDG.
Yes, Sustainable Development Goals. SDG is Sustainable Development Goals.
What is that goal?
See, basically, SDG is for the country to be self-sufficient in all aspects. That is, all the citizens of the country should have access to basic care.
It's a WHO initiative.
It's a WHO initiative.
So which has a lot of components to it. Health is one of the important component. And they just want to set a stage so that whatever achievements that have taken part in the last 15 years continues. And another new set of targets have been put, and 2030 has been earmarked as a date to a year to achieve those targets.
It's a department of cardiology. In that, specialist is electrophysiology. So pre-screening will be done by me, history taking, physical examination, and then sent to the doctor. He will write some investigations. I'll see that those investigations done, and I'll collect the investigation reports and report to the consultant physician. And if he advises any medications, I'll explain them. And also if he advises for any procedures or surgeries, I schedule those things, and I've also explained what type of procedure, what are the complication risk involved in, and how is the follow-up going to it, and I also schedule the follow-up. Coming down, they're forming a short circuit and it fast rapidly beats. This is what it is causing palpitation. During that time, the heart pumps like this, in a minute about 70 to 72 beats per minute. But for her, in 1 minute it's beating almost 120, it's just 30. Okay. What he'll do, an EP study and RF ablation is a medical procedure. A small catheter like this, they put it one from the neck and one from the leg. Don't worry, it will be done under local anesthesia. First they'll give local anesthesia.
Happy Independence Day.
You should
smile. 5 seconds. Yeah.
stopping by woods on a snowy evening. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds, the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep.
I was a paramedic, started in 1987 after a couple of years post-uni. Loved the job. Started in Sydney. I ended up moving country. To go country, I needed to move to Queensland and did nursing. And towards the end of my nursing degree, I heard a talk on PAs and went, oh, holy hell, that's what I want to be.
So can you tell me about the Australian healthcare system and the impetus for starting this program here? I mean, why do this here? I mean, who's pushing you? I mean,
yeah, sure. At the time they started fooling with the idea back in the 90s, 1990s, there was a shortage of doctors, and there was a very gross misdistribution of health workforce in those underserved areas. So that was the original intention of the people that were really moving towards pushing this. Over the course of time, things changed somewhat, and for a number of different very complicated reasons, we went from a doctor shortage to now an oversupply, especially of medical students and young junior doctors, as they're called here.
Had trouble finding placements. Can you talk about from that when you first started to how you got here?
I went back and was a paramedic for 5 years, waiting, hoping, and eventually one of the JCU students did a placement through here in ED, and once again a doctor who had great foresight went, oh hell, I can see how this would work, and he got some funding for a trial, and there was started with 3 of us. I was lucky enough to be one of those 3, and we're here.
As far as the sort of social side of healthcare goes, it's a very, very conservative system. It's still very doctor-centric. Concepts like team-based healthcare, delegation, task substitution are all very, very new concepts here. And some of the more conservative organizations, like the Australian Medical Association, like most of the nurses' organizations, unions, are opposed to us because they see us as a threat one way or another.
So how much are you limited compared to like an American PA?
Yeah. Where 90% of our staff is just taking bloods, ordering, taking bloods, imaging, just that initial stuff. Yeah, people don't know what PAs can do, and until they do, and slowly, Mitch and I are just adding bits, and if you look at the other PAs throughout Australia, that are just, and there's very few doctors that once they've worked with you and figured out what you can do, can't see potential. You know, the light bulb. Oh, you could do this, you could do that. Perfect.
The other problem is that we're only recognized in 1 state out of 6 states and 2 territories here in Australia to practice in the public healthcare system, and that's Queensland right here. You can see behind us the hospital, the Townsville Hospital, and that is the first place to actually hire PAs here in Queensland. And to give you an idea of the tyranny of distance here in Australia, that is the tertiary medical center between here and Brisbane, which is 900 miles south, and Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea. In fact, we're closer to Port Moresby. So in between are base hospitals, quite a few steps down, and rural hospitals, but that's it. That's the tertiary care center until you get down to our capital, Brisbane. So there's great need in rural and remote areas in Queensland for all the healthcare workforce that you can get a hold of, and that's hopefully where we're going to make our mark.
So tell me a little bit about your backgrounds and starting the program here.
What do you want to start with?
Alrighty. You know, he realized my frustration and desire to move on. I'd known about PAs, you know, since I was in the Army, and we were out for a beer one November night, and I said, "Yeah, well, you know, next year I'm gonna apply." And he was like, "Next year? What are you waiting for?" And applications were due, you know, in the beginning of December. So I ran around like a madman, got all my letters of reference, you know, records from these different schools I'd been to, turned in my application, got into the course, and rolled from there. So left Illinois and moved back to Utah. And that's where I spent my whole clinical time was. I spent about 5 years working at the 4th Street Homeless Clinic. When I first got back to Salt Lake, which at the time was part of the Community Health Center system. And then from there I moved up to the VA Medical Center, and for the next 8 years worked full-time and then part-time at the VA, and then found clinical medicine more than I could handle with my job in academia. So became an academic.
Having practiced as a PA in the Netherlands, in a first world setting, and not just in a first world setting, but also in a very what you would call upper class environment in The Hague, where we serviced many embassies and international organizations, in a primary care setting, was very satisfying, very challenging in its own way. But I've been drawn to clinical work in a developing country like South Africa, and so that drew me. And I certainly got a lot of very, very challenging circumstances to work in South Africa, and so that that challenge was great, because it brought out a lot of the skills. The skills that I'd learned but never applied. And the best example was when we were 4 clinicians servicing a 180-bed hospital during a national healthcare strike, where about 90% of the healthcare workers left the hospital, and so we had to do everything ourselves, and that was including radiologists. So your clinical exams had to rely, or your management had to rely on your clinical exams only, where you have to put in a chest strain and trust that you have examined the patient sufficiently to warrant that procedure.
But thinking about a particular patient, gosh, there was a guy who was, he's a psychotic diabetic, and he was normally cared for by my partner in crime at the time, Fred Bosenthal, who became a great friend of mine, and I just saw him a few months ago in the States too, and he and Fred had a pretty good relationship, but this gentleman came in one day when Fred wasn't there, and he said he was having a problem down there on his feet, and he took his shoe off, pulls his sock off, and all these maggots fall out of his sock. He was right there. Of course, the end of his toe is pretty much gone. And he's got a farm of maggots living on there, which, of course, nowadays we use maggots to clean wounds. But, I had Gene put his shoes back on and leave the maggots right where they were and send him up to the hospital to have that looked at. But, there was pleasure and there was pain in a place like that. A lot of sad stories, a lot of humorous stories like that. You met people who were aged well beyond their actual years because of being homeless or living in such challenged situations. A lot of really sad things that you couldn't do much about. But day-to-day care, I think we did a good job. And the living conditions of people there were very poor. No fresh water, and a lot of the fresh water that was there was very polluted from insecticides, and the rivers were very, very polluted because of the people washing in the rivers. So those kind of issues, a lot of malnutrition, a lot of violence. A lot of violence against children, a lot of violence against women, which made it, which was one of the very challenging parts of the job.
I joined the military in 1958. After basic training, I decided to go to airborne training, which is parachute school. Then I went to Ranger training, and afterwards I decided to start in the medical, and I became a basic medical corpsman. After completing all my training, I was assigned to 1st 82nd Airborne Division, and then was reassigned to the 1st Special Forces Unit, which was actually stationed in Okinawa. I got discharged in Okinawa, was assigned and got a passport, and was assigned to United States Operation Mission to Thailand as a civilian insurgent. My particular assignment was on the Thai, Cambodian, Laotian borders. I mean, I could walk to Laos in the morning and walk to. One guy I remember came in and he had a spot on his hand that he was really concerned with. And upon examination, I realized that he had like about 60% capacity of his lung and consolidation, and liver was probably down to his belly button, and there were lots of serious chronic problems. And I started to try to address that with him. He said, I don't want to talk about that. That's not important. I want to know if you can't do something about this spot on my hand, I don't need you, And he just put on his backpack, probably 100 pounds, and trekked off up the mountain. But my mission there was public health and psychological warfare, and preparing the people of the rural areas to not be infiltrated with the communist regime. It was an interesting assignment, because basically when I got there, I found there was no communist influence in Laos, Cambodia, and that area of northern Thailand. The only influence was with the opium traders, and the opium trails they ran the country, so it was an interesting encounter that I had to live with through there.
this is a exhibition section here. In here, so we showing lots of.
Because we know that there is a lot of unexploded ordnance that remains in Laos that was dropped by the U.S. military. We know that that ordnance does, there are explosions and people are hurt. There are a lot of disabilities caused by those explosions. So it's the idea of working and training people to be first responders to manage patients after accidents. And so this is the program that we are rolling out at the colleges of health science and then also at the district hospital level. It's important to note that we take our direction from the Ministry of Health, and so we ask them what types of training they would like. So from the very beginning, we have done ultrasound training, and we donate ultrasounds, small ultrasounds that can be used in more remote areas.
A medical assistant or PA, right? So in a Lao context, who worked in a health dispensary, needs to be able to do pharmacy, immunization, injection, prenatal care, all of this, because that's basically, there may be 3 to 5 of them in one particular, one health dispensary.
So you're almost getting these people up to PA level just by continued training.
Yes, we are now negotiating a new MOU, and we'll be negotiating to work with individuals, healthcare providers, from rural hospitals who are mid-levels, who have a lot of experience in the field and then need to improve their skills.
Mm-hmm. So how far does the person have to go to get medical care?
City area easier, right? So, but in rural area, you can, the road is not accessible by car, so that people have to walk. So if you have a medical emergency, for example, like obstetric emergency, they have to carry village. People have to carry them.
Do you have patients here?
Well, I just told my family that when I come back from Samanakhet Friday that evening, I'm gonna do a presentation on how to prevent, and then because really, unfortunately, a few family members already have diabetes. This is a big thing, right? Big things that for Lao people that when I was here for public health, that wasn't a big deal at all. But with now that people are
more westernized,
you see all the food coming in, and then the knowledge about what's good for health, you kind of lag behind. Same thing, when what I saw in Guam, So there is really big problem here. So I'm gonna do that. So I'm telling them to tell friends, to tell anybody to come. So I'm gonna do that kind of small talk to them about that. And that is something too, I really think in the future, to come back more and stay longer, would be focused on really educating people on this part too. This
That's
is
why
more like
the
a big
PA model works well here, though, because it's more the primary care, work on cardiovascular disease, including diabetes and hypertension.
Right. So, yep, absolutely.
They're just like the rest of the world. They have problems.
Yep.
So, how is it coming back and teaching in your country?
Oh, coming home, right? Coming home. I grew up here. Finished my high school here. I finished my medical training in China, but then I did come here to work. And after my public health training in the States, I came back here. That's when I worked for WHO and also AUSAID. That's just like a USAID version of the Australian government. So this is really home. And all of my family is all here. I'm the only one in the States. And my friends, so coming home. Laos has changed quite a lot since I moved, to 2004. Some, more, I would say more open, but still, as you can see, the bureaucracy is pretty heavy still. that we still have to work through, but definitely more open than you know before. Even when I worked here, 2001, 2002, 2003. So, but yeah, coming home to Lao food.
To Lao food, yeah. Yes, that's the biggest thing you miss, yeah. It's good food. Yeah.
Yeah, good food. Yeah.
I always hang out with Campo because she always knows where the good food is.
That's street food, right?
Yeah, we eat street food together. I think you showed me your favorite noodle place one time in Luang Prabang.
Yeah.
Now I can't stop going there. It's my favorite place.
Yeah, it's my favorite place to go, yeah. It's good.
you.